If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.
Welcome to Chris Clegg's Minor League Baseball Show. Insight on the future starts of Major League Baseball today. From in-depth scouting reports, player interviews, and can't-miss performances. If it's happening in the minors, we have you covered. Here's your host, Chris Clegg.
Welcome into the Dynasty Dugout Show, the first one of 2026. It's good to be back. Baseball is right around the corner. It's hard to believe that pitchers and catchers will be reporting in about a month. The offseason's flying by, and we still have some high-profile free agents out there, so hopefully we get those guys landing spots soon so we kind of know where people will be. But it has been a fun offseason. We've had some big signings, some fun trades, and I'm excited to be back and talk about some of the international players that have signed and will be contributing to their major league teams this year. But before we really dive in, I'm excited to welcome a new writer to the site, Rhys White. Rhys, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. For those that aren't familiar with me, I've spent the past, 5 years at Prospects Live. I cover the California League, and I pitch in with prospect stuff over there. But I think I'm going to be doing mostly the same, but through like a more fantasy lens here. And I'm super excited. I'm super excited to join the team, you, Beck, and everybody else. And it's a great time to be a Dynasty Dugout subscriber, I think, personally.
Yeah, got a lot of good stuff coming everybody's way. So as we kick off 2026, we've got a lot of fun content. Rhys has a lot of great ideas. We'll be doing more college coverage. There's a ton of talented draft prospects out in Rhys's way that he'll get to see this year. I'll get some SEC guys, ACC guys. So I have it covered. And then we get the minor league season, and we'll kind of have it covered across the globe. We have somebody that kind of covers pretty much all the leagues now, all the minor league leagues, which is helpful. Beck's up in the Midwest area. We got Connor that covers the Eastern League, Rhys out west, and then myself in the Southeast area. So we get it pretty much all prospects. We'll get to see live, which is fun. I'm just ready to be back at the ballpark. It's been since the fall league for me, so I hadn't seen live baseball in a while. So I'm missing it and ready to be back at the field. But let's dive in. Let's talk FYPD today. That kind of season is upon us where there's a lot of FYPD drafts taking place. I know some people are crazy and draft very early. That's fun. I'm down for that. But we're going to talk some FYPD as a lot of leagues wait till after the January 15 signings, which is coming up next week. So that'll be coming about soon. We're going to talk about what FYPD is and some players to know, especially kind of on the NPB KBO side and some of the J15 guys, and then include some draft sleepers from last summer. So Rhys, do you want to explain what exactly an FYPD is and why does that draft or picks matter?
So an FYPD is your first year player draft. And for a lot of leagues, that is your first chance to get some of the freshly signed J15. They've been doing the J15 for a while, and I'm still not used to it. I keep wanting to call it the J2. And then the guys that are coming in from the draft, as well as some leagues will fold in the NPB KBO guys. It is the way for a lot of leagues to introduce new talent that hasn't been, whether you're able to pick them up in season or not. This kind of just it's like the most fun time of the year, in my opinion. Like, it's the most fun part of the dynasty season, especially in this draft where I think things are a little bit more up in the air. So maybe there is some more validity to trading away your picks. If you can trade away to get future picks, I think there might be some value in that if we want to do like a more meta FYPD strategy sort of conversation. But this is a way in which most leagues allow you to get the freshly drafted and freshly signed guys.
For sure. And this is one of the first years I remember, it feels like there's not like a consensus at the top, which actually makes it fun. I feel like a lot of FYPD seasons we got just kind of the rankings are kind of the same across all websites. I haven't looked at a lot of rankings, but this draft in general just feels like there's a wide variety of players at the top. You can go a lot of different ways, and it also allows some talent to slip. I think you can get some values kind of later, and I think it's a fun draft to have maybe not be at the top and be in that mid first round, and maybe even later in the back end you get some good talent. There's some fun college pitching. There's some interesting bats as well in this year's class. So we've got the rankings out. They're updated to about 300 deep on the website. I've got 100 written reports as well. If you want to go check those out, they are on the front page of the site, pinned at the top. So the question is, are you trading this year's picks? This is always a controversial thing. I think people are always like, this draft sucks kind of thing. Like every summer, everybody's like, this draft just sucks. And there's always guys that pop, but like, is this a year where you want to trade picks, to trade back, or even for next year?
I would love to trade back. I think we're going to talk about some of the guys that I really want to draft later. So I would rather almost get more value. And I think that, depending on your league, like I'm in the league with 30 teams, and it's pretty crazy. That's like a pretty active league. I'm looking to trade back from 1.14, basically, because I think that there's more value for me to mine maybe in the 30 to 40 range. So maybe if I can pick up more picks and pick up a more established prospect, that might be worth what I'm doing. If I can trade my picks for future picks, I think next year's class, which I'm starting to dig into, is going to be very exciting, especially at the top. And there's going to be some depth as well. There's quite a few college hitters next year, which will obviously raise the profile of the draft. And I think that is one of the big reasons that people say, quote, this FYPD sucks, is because there's not the top end college bats, right? Like Avia Arquette, Ethan Conrad. That's like, it's not an exciting group at the top, but I think that this is a draft that has a lot of depth. And if you're willing to take upside gambles, there's a lot of young shortstops from the prep ranks. There's a really good a J15 class. And I think that if you really, really like to like gamble on upside, I think that there are some really good high school arms in this draft that if you're willing to wait, there could be some value to be mined from there.
100%. Yeah, it's a good year to kind of be down the board a little bit, in my opinion, and just looking kind of where some guys could fall. And it wouldn't shock me if you get in the late teens and early 20 range and some of those guys perform as well as anybody at the top. I mean, from like a college bat perspective, like I'm looking at, a guy like Jace Lavalette, who coming into the last spring was the consensus to be number one in the MLB draft and for FYPD. And he had a rough year for various reasons, but the talent we know is there. With him, if he rebounds, and there's some arms in that range too that I think could really pop, especially the college arms. Like I feel like you can kind of wait on them a bit and be in a good spot to grab some talent there. So I do think that it could be a good year to trade back. And I think next summer's draft too, if you trade for picks for next year's FYPD, you're in a pretty good spot. I'm personally always a proponent to trade FYPD picks for win now pieces. I think anytime you can do that and you can get an MLB piece that's established, you're doing good, because prospects are prospects, right? We love them, but they are quite risky. So I'm kind of in the boat to trade most of your picks often. And then if you can get some picks later, you're doing pretty good. So let's transition a bit to the NPB and KBO. We had some talent that is signed to come over to play this year. Now, some of these guys, some leagues don't include them in FYPD. Some do. I think that I'm kind of a proponent they should be in the draft rather than just like giving somebody a chance to claim them with a waiver or fab. That's matter of opinion, but we do have a couple guys that could make impacts. There's some kind of controversial players that I think too. And this one right off the bat, Muntaka Murakami, he's been known for some time. You go back to like probably 2020 when he kind of became on radars as a young bat in the NPB, home run king over in Japan. Big power, but there's also some concerns. And I think the contract was a little eye-opening to some as he signs with the White Sox as a 2-year, $34 million deal off the top of my head. Is that correct? And what are your thoughts on Murakami? Because I think he's kind of polarizing, somebody that could give you power, but I'm a little concerned with.
It is all power and nothing else. You were right, 2 for $34 million, which is kind of an eye-opening deal. I think that kind of showed a teams viewed him as a first baseman, because there were some people who thought maybe he could play third base. Obviously, with a 2 for 34, it's not going to happen. Like he's a first baseman through and through, and honestly, he might be trending towards a DH. He's not going to be very good there. But we're not here to talk about his defense. His power is absolutely crazy. It is probably 80 power, but it's probably plays 80 raw that plays down because of the contact skills he has. I was digging in some video on him, and it seems like he's like a touch late on fastballs, especially up in the zones. That's going to cause some problems. And he is willing to chase breaking balls down, he's willing to chase north and south end of the strike zone. So I am kind of worried about him, but like, this is a guy who could hit like 220, but maybe hit 25 to 30 bombs and give you immediate value. So when you were talking about getting, immediate major league pieces, he should definitely be bumped up in people's FYPDs, in my opinion. If you're just looking for immediate, this guy's going to help, because who's going to help you more quickly? Murakami or Eli Willits type. So I'm going to bump him up, but I am very scared. There's a lot of red flags in the swing and in the swing profile.
I tend to agree. I mean, you go back, he hit 56 home runs back in 2022, created a lot of buzz. He's dealt with some injuries, but there's been some real regression too. And I think you look at the surface numbers, it's easy to get fooled. I think we have to remember that the average pitch velocity for fastballs in Japan's like between 90 and 91 miles an hour. And there's been different numbers float out there regarding, the contact numbers for Murakami and against better fastballs, but also like, I think somebody floated like 95 plus and the pitch sample was like tiny, like a super small sample. I think that you look at, my concern is 73% zone contact rate last year, overall contact rate of 64%. And then against velocity and against spin, the contact rate was well below 60%. So we'll see how that translates. I think that the power is certainly there. He had a 50% hard hit rate, 91 mile an hour average EV, and a 116 max. Those will all play. He's going to hit home runs, but how does it translate batting average wise? That is the question. Now, this guy kind of has the flip of that profile where he might feel a little safer, and that's Kazuma Okamoto, who landed with the Toronto Blue Jays. Obviously, a big contender, went to the World Series last year, took it down the wire, and they're beefing up that team. And Okamoto feels like a part of that. He feels a little safer than Murakami to me. Maybe doesn't have the flashy upside, but what are your thoughts there?
I think that if you're looking for more safety, I think that he definitely provides that. There might be some multi-position eligibility here with him too. First base, third base, maybe some left field. I've even seen some float out the idea that he could even stand at second base, which would not be great for their defense, especially when they have people like Andres Jimenez and stuff. But if he can gain eligibility there, I'm totally cool with it. I don't know why I was going to say totally awesome with it. But Okamoto, yeah, it's like maybe like if we're going to use a scouting scale, like maybe like 55 hit, 50 power. But in that ballpark, maybe the power plays up a little bit. We'll have to see how well he does. A lot of these guys, we don't know how they're going to do when they transition. It does take a little bit. He also might be learning a new position. There's just so much up in the air with Okamoto, but he is a safer bat. Like he should hit 20 to 25 home runs, maybe hit 260 in his first season over here. And then while he acclimates, maybe the batting average takes a jump forward. It's a good approach. He doesn't strike out all that much. He's not passive like Murakami is. Murakami also struggles with, I think, being a little too passive, which is interesting because he also has that chase as well. So it's an interesting combination, which inflated Murakami's walk rate, but also like puts him into really bad counts. He's down 0-2 quite often when I was watching him. But Okamoto, he's just like a more refined hitter. It's like I don't really want to compare him because I know things haven't worked out as well as Red Sox fans would have hoped, but it's kind of like almost the same thing that we were told when Yoshida came over, right? Sure. It's a professional hitter and there's some power, but I think that it's a little bit more oomph in the bat than Yoshida was when he came over.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The power numbers look respectable, and while the high end numbers weren't as high as like Murakami, like Okamoto still ran an average exit velocity north of like 92 miles an hour, which is really good and actually above where Murakami is, but just the higher, like 9th percentile was lower and the max was a little bit lower. But I think the approach is good. And we talked about the zone contact rate with Murakami was 73%. It was north of 90% for Okamoto. So you just feel a little bit safer there. And I think that if you are looking for a hitter that kind of has that higher floor that maybe he hits 15 homers in the majors, 15, 18. I'm not really sure. We'll see how that plays out, but he's going to hit for average and give you a decent OBP. Like Okamoto is a little bit safer. Now, this pitcher is probably the guy I'm the highest on coming over, and that's Tatsuya Imai. And I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. He lands with the Houston Astros. He's actually put him at the top of the FYPD for my rankings. I mean, he appeared in the NPB back as a 19-year-old, and he steadily improved. Very good year last year in the NPB, 1.92 ERA in 163 innings with a 28% strikeout rate to 7% walk rate. And over the last 3 years, a 2.18 ERA. And we know those don't necessarily translate, but there are some good traits to like about Imai. What are your thoughts there? And is he somebody you're targeting for your FYPDs?
If I have the first pick, I'm taking Amai because I think at the very worst you can trade him, like, and get a lot of value, or trade that pick right before the draft. And as you and I probably both know, like the FYPD picks, they artificially inflate in value right before the draft, right? And especially when you're drafting at the top, so maybe there's some value to be mined there as well. But he is going to be an instant contributor. He isn't the Astros have kind of gone through a transition period. There's been like a brain drain of sorts. A lot of smart people have left the organization to go to other organizations, and I think they have regressed a little bit on the hitting side. I still think on the pitching side, they are one of the smarter organizations out there, and I think that's why Amai picked them. Is the ballpark great? No, it's not. It's if anybody who's a lift and pull guy, he might give up quite a few home runs, but the guy has really, really good stuff. Like you said, he touches 99. He has a few different shapes on the breaking ball. He's a really good splitter. I like the slider quite a bit. I think this is a guy who can come in and be just a ready-made pitcher for you and provide, SP3 maybe in his first season, and then maybe he takes another jump forward. The interesting thing is, like, if you're investing in him now, like, where is he going to pitch? Because he is in that weird contract where he basically can opt out every single year of the contract. So maybe that he lands in a more favorable pitching organization after this, and a more favorable pitching park, because we're just going to have to wait and see on that. And I think that one of the things with him that some teams are a little afraid of, that I've read about a little bit, is that the NPB does not use the same ball as the major leagues, and Amai did not pitch in the World Baseball Classic. So there is no sample with what he can do with the major league ball. He might have thrown some bullpens and stuff that we might not be privy to, but it was a valid concern for some teams, because for some reason, we play baseball and there's like 2 or 3 things that we need to have standardized, and the ball isn't one of them. So your fastball shape can vary widely with different balls and everything. So I'm going to be fascinated to see how he comes out in spring training, what he looks like. I know he's not pitching in the World Baseball Classic, so I think it's going to be a very interesting time for if you have Amai, or if you're in that range in the draft. And I would definitely be taking him, because I think that there's a lot of upside to be mined here, along with some decent floor, because I do think that there's a very low probability that he's just going to flame out unless he gets injured. But that's a realistic chance with any pitcher.
Yeah, I think worst case, you get a very solid starting pitcher out of him. There's some good fastball traits as well. The slider, some people have described as like a backward slider, in the sense where it's kind of interesting pitch. There's a splitter and changeup in the profile. I just like the floor to be like a mid-rotation guy. Like you said, if he pitches super well, he probably opts out of that deal and lands somewhere even better, which bodes well, I think, for fantasy purposes there. These next few guys aren't as high profile and maybe aren't as relevant, in my opinion, but Sung Moon Song lands with the Padres. I'll be interested to see how they deploy him and kind of what role he fits for them. It wouldn't be shocking if he's the second baseman, but also he could kind of be a platoon type guy in that infield. So it'll be something to watch. He has a left-handed bat. And so I'm kind of curious your take on him, and what kind of role do you think he fills? He got a 4-year, $15 million deal. So it's not like a huge deal if he's a bench guy. Wouldn't be shocking. He really had a big year in the KBO last year, but those guys sometimes struggle coming over. The KBO is a little bit different than the NPB. And, we haven't seen power numbers necessarily translate for some guys like they have from KBO to MLB. So what are your thoughts there on Song?
I am very fascinated on what the Padres decide to do. I think they're like the most interesting organization if you're not a fan of them. I think that they do things in a very interesting manner. But I think that roster resource currently projects him out to be, I think, the 9-hole hitter. And I think that, that probably shows you what they think of the bat and everything. But if he can work his way up that lineup, the top 4 to 5, that lineup is really, really good. So maybe he can like find his way into some fantasy value there. Probably second base, third base. There's some power here, but how much does that translate? Like you mentioned, I do think in the KBO that the ball sort of flies out of the ballpark like crazy. And then you compare that with the NPB where it's like almost like dead ball era stats. But he's, I think there's a chance for maybe 350 to 400 plate appearances with him. So in deeper leagues, there's definitely some value. And if there's some positional versatility, if he does make the roster, because with that sort of little financial investment in him, they don't have to play him in the major leagues to start. They can maybe send him to AAA because, as you and I both know, the KBO is a step behind the NPB, where the NPB is kind of, I believe, in between MLB and AAA. I think that the KBO can kind of vary wildly. Some of the teams are pretty good, and some of the teams are just like not like, there's like a lot of non-prospects, I guess is the best way to put it. So I think that we'll have to see how he does in spring training, what he does there, but I'm tepidly in. I think that is a nice little flyer that you can, especially if you're like in a 30 teamer where like just plate appearances are just currency and gold over there. There is some value to be mined from Sung.
Yeah, it's one of those that you take a shot on deeper in the draft, I think, and it could pay off. Next two are pitchers, and both have actually pitched. And our American, Cody Ponce, is the first one, and he was with the Brewers, former second-round pick back in 2015, and he went over to the NPB after struggling a bit stateside, and he kind of reinvented his game, and he had a huge year this year in the KBO. So he went from NPB in 2022 to 2024, and then went over to the KBO, had a 1.89 ERA across 180 innings. That stands out to me, the durability side of things, where he pitched deep into games often and had pretty respectable ratios. Now he lands with the Blue Jays, 3-year, $30 million deals. He's somebody that you're looking to target, or is this a case where he bounces out of this rotation if they do go and land another big starter?
I think that if they land another starter, I would be very afraid of him because I think he's ultimately a reliever, and maybe, he could. I just don't know if he's breaking into getting a ton of saves, so they're just like slight dip in value there. But as right now, he's currently projected to be the fifth starter, and if he's bouncing between being a starter and being a reliever, I'm not as in. But it's going to be a fun profile. I mean, I really like the pitch mix. I like the way in which I think the command and the durability have been really, really nice. So maybe there's like a little bit of like deep league like streamer sort of value here when he does start. But I don't know what the value of him as a reliever is, because I don't think he is really going to be the closer. I think he's going to be part of the bridge to the closer. Maybe he's a multi-inning guy, but and there's value in that in points leagues.
For sure. Yeah, I'm kind of curious how that one plays out. And if the Blue Jays, they certainly seem to still be active, so they could still be looking to get some guys, maybe even, add more to that rotation that they've done a lot too. So, and the final guy that we'll talk about coming back over is Anthony Kay, who at one point had some kind of prospect intrigue. He was drafted by the Mets back in the day, former first rounder. He goes to Toronto, spends some time there, and then goes over to the NPB and again, kind of reinvented his game. Didn't strike out a lot of guys. That is my concern as he comes over, but now he lands with the White Sox. And what we do know about the White Sox is guys get plenty of opportunities there. Roster Resource projects him to be the fourth starter, which he could get some innings. What do those innings look like? That's the question. And do I want to invest in Anthony Kay? I'm not sure, but Rhys, your thoughts there?
I'm not investing too heavily in him. He's probably like a good spot start streamer sort of guy. I just like if he's not striking out a bunch of guys, it kind of has to be a really good. I mean, even though the strikeouts are like lower in the NPB because of the way in which the batters are taught to like they don't chase, they don't swing and miss as much. But I just don't think he's ever going to be a guy who even comes close to like an 8K per 9 sort of guy. So I just don't think there's a lot of fantasy value in here outside of maybe like a nice ratio play like on certain in good matchups. And at that point, I'm not investing too heavily in him. You can probably find him and a bunch of other guys like him on the waiver wire.
Very, very fair. And I'm kind of in the same boat. Let's transition to some more unknowns. The J15 class. It's always interesting. We went through a rough stretch with the J15 group or even the J2 group where it felt like right around the time of COVID, like we really just became disconnected with like the top dollar guys and the top performers that came over. And honestly, like there weren't a lot of guys for a while that felt like for several years, it felt like the classes were very weak. I feel like we're kind of moving past that a little bit. We're certainly in the post-COVID era at this point. Last year's J15 class was good. this year's has some intriguing guys as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of those guys. And again, like a lot of these guys are still question marks and could totally not pan out. What I've learned is that the dollar value that they sign for never reflects the performance, because the problem with the system is that guys agree to deals when they're like 12 or 13 years old, a lot of times, the well-known guys, and they just change so much. But it does feel like to me that some of the top dollar guys this year could be some of the better players, but to be determined. So we'll talk about a couple of those guys.
Yeah, here, I'll take over the hosting duties on this one because you've done more research than just about anybody on these guys. I mean, outside of the teams and maybe Ben Badler, I don't think there's anybody who's more researched on the J15 guys. So let's start with the top guy. There's rumors that he's going to skip the DSL and go play in the Arizona complex. Luis Hernandez, shortstop for the San Francisco Giants. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, so interesting rumors for sure. If he does skip the DSL, it would be pretty telling. And then there's the questions of, well, the Giants also signed a top guy last year, Josuar De Jesus Gonzalez. Rumor is he may go to single A and skip the complex. That'll be fun. Luis Hernandez is very kind of a high floor type player. He's 5'10", 180. Maybe he grows. He's still young. But I mean, what I like about him is that he played in the Venezuelan professional league as a 15-year-old a couple of summers ago. And he held his own, very impressive, against some former major league pitchers, actually, that were playing in that league. He struck out 11 times, 114 plate appearances. He slashed 346, 386, 452 there with a homer and 8 extra base hits. But I'm just impressed with the hit tool here. It feels like the floor is very high with Hernandez. And I think that there's potential that he could develop into like a plus hit tool type. And he's currently like an above average runner. The biggest question to me is, what kind of power does he grow into, just given the frame? And the good news is the bat speed is there. Like you watch him and you can see the bat speed's pretty evident in his swing. Very smooth looking swing. I think he's a guy that could reach 20 to 25 home runs with time. And it may be one of those cases where maybe it takes him a couple years in the minors to really get to the game power. Like it's in there as you watch him, but he's also like, it's such a high floor at the plate, but the glove's really good as well in the infield, and he can run. So like I'm looking at him and I'm like, okay, maybe he could be a 2020 guy early in his career. And it just feels like a safe floor, which doesn't happen all that often with these international guys. And given that he has performed in a professional league before, it gives me a little confidence. That's why I've been pretty high on Luis Hernandez. Slotted him third in the FYPD, which, it may be high. I don't really know where other people have slotted these guys or if they have, but Hernandez to me just kind of feels like the safe bet and feels like a guy that will develop. So pretty high on him and higher than I've been on a J15 guy in the FYPD in a long time.
I was going to ask, okay, so comparing him to other J15 guys, like is he the guy that you were the highest on? And I mean, like, if you're ranking him third above, like looking at your rankings, Eli Willits, JoJo Parker, Dax Kilby, we're talking about, if he was in this draft, he might have gone 1-1 in the real life draft. So if you're worried about the power, like let's say the power never develops, like it's 15 home runs, 25-ish stolen bases, like that'll definitely play. And him and Josuar De Jesus Gonzalez is going to be a very fun system, very fun top of the system for the Giants, who is about to probably lose their best prospect here, like in very early on in the season with Bryce Eldridge. So I think the Giants fans have a lot to be excited about. And I think a lot of people in the FYPD space kind of have a lot to be excited about with Luis Hernandez. I'm kind of hoping that if I don't trade that 1.14, Luis Hernandez kind of slides to me, because in some leagues, people are just kind of hesitant to take the J15 guys because of the relative risk that comes along with them. And you don't really see them for Jeff Ponce was telling me about this recently. He's like, it's a good time to invest in these guys because no one sees them for almost 2 years. Very few people are going to tune into their YouTube streams on in the DSL. You and I probably will.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I think that Luis Hernandez is one of the more exciting J15 guys in a long time. But there's another guy, who's generated a lot of buzz. He kind of pulled, in today's college landscape with an NIL, he kind of flipped commitments, which isn't as common at the top of the class, but I think it's starting to become more common as teams are starting to, change things. And I think that players are realizing they do have a little bit more agency here, and they don't need to stick to these commitments that they signed when they were 12 years old. So let's talk about him. Wandy Osagin, you might know better than I do on the last name, but shortstop, he flipped from the New York Yankees to the New York Mets. What do you got on him?
Yeah, so that's an interesting situation where they decided to part with the international scouting director. I think that was like November, December. And just a couple of days ago, there's word that they're just like pulling the rug on like their entire like international department. Like, so I'm not sure what's going on with the Yankees, but part of me thinks that like that could be the reason why Osahine flipped. But yeah, it's interesting to go to the crosstown rival, but he's an interesting player. Like he's one you watch and you're like, yeah, he kind of looks the part there. He's one of the younger players on the international side of things too. He will spend the entire DSL season at 16. So he barely made the cut to sign this year. So when you have somebody that young and that already has the intriguing skill set, he's somebody that certainly looks the part. It's really high end bat speed. He's registered exit velocities like up to 110 with wood, which pretty impressive. I think there's the potential to hit for power right out of the bat in the DSL. And it's just a smooth swing, creates natural loft from the left side. He can get to that pull side power. There are some questions about his ability to handle fastballs. He won't face a lot of that in the DSL. So maybe it becomes a thing later where he does hit in the DSL. But like some of the film and some of the reports I read is that fastballs like up in the zone kind of had some question marks surrounding the profile, but he's somebody that looks like he could be a power hitter, just, given what he already brings to the table. And there's some speed as well. Like he could steal some bases. So fun player to kind of dream on if all kind of clicks. And so that's Wandy Osahina, spelled Asigen, that last name. And certainly could be butchering that because I've heard several pronunciations of it. And it's always funny to me, like after a guy sign, we'll see the spellings of some names change too from the international side. So you never know what you're going to get. But yeah, fun player.
Yeah, then we're gonna watch him on streams when he comes stateside, and even his home broadcasters are gonna get his name wrong. It's just one of the quirks of the minor leagues. Just a quick question on him, comparing him to Elian Pena. Which do you prefer, him or Elian Pena?
Pena had a great year last year, and so he's an interesting one where his numbers looked really good. But I talked to a couple of scouts that actually saw him, and they were more concerned about like, what does the long-term projection look like for Pena? And is he someone that, has more upside? And I don't know. So that's kind of the question. There's been some interesting opinions of him. I do think like off the bat, like I'm just slotting him in, like we know what we're getting out of Pena at least. So while I think it could be close, I'd probably give the edge to Pena just based on the little bit we do know from his DSL stint last year. But I do think the upside maybe goes to Wandy. If we say like what player could be ranked higher at the end of next year, it wouldn't shock me if Wandy Osahine will be above him.
One of the interesting things with Pena is he hit all his home runs in like bunches. It felt like they all came in like 2 or 3 games. It sort of happens at that level, and then he had like a 3 home run game. So, the guy's got some pretty crazy power. Let's move over. We're going to stay in the National League East here for a minute. We're going to go from New York to Philly, and then we're going to go to the Phillies' top fantasy guy, Francisco Renteria. I think that's how you pronounce it. Yep. I'm very sorry if I'm butchering his name if his family comes across this. What do you got on him? He looks like a big physical sort of corner power guy.
Yeah, he's looks like a corner outfielder to me. He's already 6'3", 200. He turned 17 like over the next couple of days, like just before signing, but pretty impressive frame for his age. And there's a lot of present power, but I think there's some kind of room for growth here as well. It's again like electric bat speed, like I've mentioned with some of the other guys. And there's some batting practice video of him hitting some just absolute majestic home runs. And you just kind of dream on like what he could be. And the reports are like really strong contact and approach as well. So you like to kind of see that while he is a power over hit type, he is a plus runner, like clock time. Some of the clock times I've seen from 60s, which again, they're hit or miss, but what you can find or source, it was a plus 60 time. That probably ticks down. Like if you're thinking, you look at this frame, you're like, yeah, it probably doesn't sustain as he gets older. But I think if all pans out, like he could be like a 25-30 home run bat in the corner of an outfield. And maybe even tags on like a couple stolen bases, which plays well for fantasy. But, it'll come down to the hit tool. And again, like it's almost like a high school guy. Like we just don't know how the hit tool is going to translate, especially with somebody this big who's kind of got some long levers. There's still some question marks, but you look at the kind of upside that he could bring. And again, it's one that I'm comfortable taking a shot on, like in the late teens of an FYPD. If you get to the 20s and like, yeah, I mean, like it's just as much upside, if not more, than some of the high school guys you could get there. So why not take a shot on in hopes that he does develop into, what he could be.
And one of the better things for us personally evaluating him is he will be the Phillies have one of the better YouTube setups for the DSL game. So I'm very excited about that. Let's move over. We're gonna move to the American League for the next two guys. Let's move to Sacramento Athletics. I don't know what they're going to be calling themselves because they couldn't get that trademark figured out. Right. J15 Colome, shortstop for the Athletics. What do you got on him?
Yeah, so he's one that, like, as I was watching him and writing the report, I just kept moving up and up, where, he's Major League bloodlines, if you know the name. Alex Colome, that's his uncle, if I'm not mistaken, and his father also played in the majors as well. So he's been around the game for some time, and it's another one that has an impressive frame for his age. It's super big power, like Renteria, where you watch him and the ball just explodes off the bat. A lot of big home runs. And it's pretty smooth. And honestly, like it's kind of low effort. Like you watch him and he's like not selling out for the power, not a lot of moving parts. Again, hit tool, I'm not sure where it lands, but when you watch him, like it feels like that he could be kind of calm enough in the box and is fluid enough where, he could make enough contact. He is a shortstop, maybe moves over to third base. But I think the power probably plays wherever he lands in the field. And I think that you just want him to have like an average hit tool, not a lot of present speed. So it's somebody that is not going to steal you bags, but does have power potential. And it's, again, just one of those guys where on the tape, it was like, yeah, this just looks good compared when you're comparing him to some of the other guys. So kind of kept bumping Colome up and up and up. And that's Joe Hensey. That's JOHENSSY. So Colome, COLOME. So if you're looking for him, that name, Athletics, whatever they will be called in the near future, we don't know, but fun prospect for sure.
Yeah, and actually just going right up your FYPD list here. Okay, this one's going to give me some problems. Kansas City Royals outfield prospect on Yabel Gomez. I'm going to go with that.
I think that's pretty good.
Okay, cool. I took 4 years of Spanish in high school, so maybe this is probably coming in handy.
Yeah, it's another one that just stands out on the tape to me. Very good frame, good mover, athlete that clocks like 60 to 70 grade run times, and good center field defense. But it's not just that. Like if it was just speed and defense, then I wouldn't have ranked him that high for an FYPD purposes. But he's somebody that has the frame that could tap into power. Like he just looks like if he adds a little bit of weight, he will get to that, because there is some bat speed in the profile already when you watch him. Hit tool's reportedly pretty good, and he's somebody that the makeup reports were good, like very high work ethic, received high marks from some people that are closer to the situation and some of the reports that I did read on him. So, it's one of those guys that you just assume just works and gets better and better and better. And, the hit tool being there, I'll kind of bet on a guy with his frame tapping into a little bit of power. And worst case, if he doesn't, like he's got the speed to steal bases and a decent hit tool that hits. So it was another guy that, the Royals have, been better on the international side as of recent. There weren't a ton of hits, but they've kind of been doing a little bit better there. And I think it's a profile that could be 5 tool if all clicks, just given the speed, defense, and you're just kind of hoping the power comes around on him. And I think it could, given the frame and what you see currently in the bat speed and the hand speed, the strength that he's got there. So it'll be a fun one to watch.
If it all clicks, it seems like it's an Eduardo Quintero sort of starter kit. I mean, looking back on reports from him when he was the same age, it was the same thing. Great makeup, good frame. You can see where the power could come. Good runner, good defender. We see a bunch of these guys. Do all of them? Do any of them end up being Eduardo Quintero? No, but it's worth the gamble, especially like we keep talking about. It's a not a strong FYPD class, so maybe you should go more upside hunting, not humping. I don't even know where that came from. Anyways, dude, this is I'm out of my element on the J15 guys, but I'm going to be catching up on them, and honestly, I'm super excited about it. So, do you want to transition over to FYPD sleepers? Do you have any more J15 guys?
Yeah, those kind of hit the top 5. And there's a couple other guys, and I guess I can hit a couple names to know. Victor Valdez with the Rays, he's one of the higher dollar guys. I think that there's some intriguing traits there. Elian Rosario to the Rangers just stood out to me on tape. He's a monster. Like he's listed 6'2", 195, but I would guess looking at him, he's like 6'4", like 230, just looks like a big power hitter. So somebody to kind of keep an eye on. And then Santiago Solarte with the Marlins, 6'5", 6'6" height. He's just massive, like kind of lanky, long limb, good athlete, big raw power type. And like he's one I pushed in the top 10. I mean, again, it's hard to judge if these are accurate, but exit velocity is up to 110 and a 6'2", 60-yard dash. So like it's like if all clicks, it could be like a Sebastian Walcott type ascent. So he's just somebody that like kind of bookmark. And if you want to take a huge upside shot, Santiago Solarte with the Marlins is one of those guys. And I'm like, okay, like, maybe you take a shot on him and hope that, and maybe I push him up a little bit. Just if you really believe he can be that kind of upside, it's you take a chance. So we're going to finish with some FYPD sleepers. Rhys has a few. I've got one as well. So first one is Brady Ebel. Hear what you think about him. He's somebody I like as well and had some pretty decent performance last year when he did play in games.
Yeah, he was part of that really loaded Corona high school team that had Seth Hernandez, Billy Carlson, and someone who ended up going to, I believe, Auburn. So it was a loaded squad. They're one of the best programs in Southern California. Brady Ebel, his dad is in the Dodgers organization as a coach. So there's some big league bloodlines as well. Kind of knows what to do. Has been around for a while. I don't think that there's any crazy tool here. I don't think he's ever going to be like a guy who leads the league in home runs or stolen bases, but I think there's a chance for a really well-rounded, maybe in his best season, 2020 sort of upside. It's enough athleticism to steal that many bases in today's game where everybody steals bases. And there's enough power here. And, at that point in the FYPDs, I really like the idea of just gambling on guys who have some sort of like tools, some quality makeup, as well as being in a really, really good player dev situation. There's probably nobody better than the Milwaukee Brewers. And it felt like I heard rumblings around the draft time that the landing spot for him for player development was very important on his signability. I mean, obviously his dad's in the Dodgers organization, so they know what's going on. The Brewers do a really good job. So I'm just really in on the profile. He kind of is apparently gives high marks for his defensive ability and his IQ. So I think that this is a guy who, with all these sort of things put together, where you have him ranked, if you're getting him as the 51st player in an FYPD, I think that you're doing really, really well, because there is also some room to fill out and add a little bit more power if he does want to transition more to the third base side of things. So maybe he unlocks 25 home runs with, maybe 15 to 18 stolen bases. There's quite a bit of upside and developmental runway here with a good organization. And that's kind of what I want to gamble on.
Sure. Yeah. And the ranking may be a tad low. Like if you think that I may be willing to gamble like as high as like, in the 30 range, I think that the upside's certainly there for that as well. He's got a good frame. His swing, like in the box, I wrote that he kind of reminded me of Corey Seager when you just watch the swing. That's kind of what I saw. And that's not a comp. So if you're listening, don't take that as a comp, but it's just like a mechanical comp, I guess, per se, where it's pretty simple. It's a smooth bat path, simple toe tap. And, I think that he certainly could fill out and add some pop there. So I do like Ebel. Your next guy, I'm also a big fan of. I think he's been kind of underrated. I think he provides a pretty good floor and some upside, and that's Brandon Compton. What do you got on Compton for us?
I absolutely love Brandon Compton. I liked him at ASU. He was kind of an underrated guy. I mean, he didn't hit the way that I think that many people would have wanted. 271, 379, 486 slash line, which is not great for, especially in the Big 12, where it seems like offense is just sort of crazy over there. But look under the hood. I mean, I know it's the MLB draft combine, but I think he had the highest exit velocity of anybody there, with really good bat speed as well. So we're talking about a guy who swings hard, has some power, has a 110 90th EV percentile exit velocity, and he is just, I think that there's some tools here. There's an above average runner as well. Is he a great defender? No, but that's not what we're really worried about. And I think that there is, I think he's being a little undersold here. I think that if he went to a different organization that people had a little bit more confidence in, I think that people would be jumping on the Brandon Compton train, because he has all the tools. It's just, if he can be an average contact guy, we're talking about, easy 2020 upside.
Yeah, I agree. And he was a guy that performed well with Wood Bat on the Cape last summer. He hit 6 home runs in 38 games with Wood, and hit 331 there. Yeah, I think that's the biggest question is contact, like you said, but good approach, good swing decisions, big power, efficient base stealer as well. So I think that, this is, I won't say it's a boom or bust profile, but I think there's a lot of upside where you can get Brendan Compton. So big fan of his as well. I'm going to throw one in there, and it's James Quinn Irons of the Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays draft well. Quinn Irons is from George Mason, and he's like the data darling of all data darlings. Like if you like model type guys, like he's it. Big exit velocities, like a 111 90th. So he has pretty good contact as well. It took a big leap last year where he went from 77% in zone contact in 2024 up to 89%. So again, it's the question, does that stick, I guess, with Quinn Irons? And he also had a 20% chase rate. So a lot of fun there. Fun profile of all clicks, and the Rays always have those kind of guys that pop. And James Quinn Irons, 6'5", 230. So he's got a pretty good frame as well. On top of the fact that he stole 36 bases, has some decent speed. He just kind of checks a lot of boxes that I look for. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on him or if you want to hop over to your next guy. Take it away.
James Quinn Irons is an absolute tool shed, to use the term. Like it's kind of everything that you want. Apparently he's just everything you want. He kind of is one of those guys that you want first off the bus, I guess is a good scouting term to use for him, because he's massive. Looks like a tight end out there. So I actually want to scroll down one player after James Quinn Irons, and he's a totally different profile. Mitch Voigt. He is not going to surprise anybody or anything like that. But Mitch Voigt, he is a former two-way guy who is going to be giving up pitching, and he is now going to be focusing on hitting. And the Mets have done a decent job with these guys who are, they take two-way guys, convert them into only focusing on one thing, and they have taken the step forward. I mean, Nolan McLean was a two-way guy in college. Carson Benj was also a two-way guy in college, although his pitching was a little bit, he was a two-way guy, but it's a little generous on the two-way part of it. But Mitch Voigt, he did not, I don't believe he pitched in his final season at the University of Michigan, but he has an optimized swing. I think that there's going to be a lot of extra base hits. I think that there's going to be maybe 20 home runs in this sort of profile. And at second base, I mean, we all know the second base position is not great. He's kind of a second base left field guy, so he's really going to have to hit. But it's, it's decent EVs, 106 90th with 114 max. He has a good arm, obviously, from his days as being a pitcher. So I'm just in on the profile, and I really trust the Mets in their way to develop these sort of guys who are now finally getting a chance to focus and kind of master one side of baseball. I think that there's a lot of developmental runway with a lot of these guys who are two-way guys in college, and then the moment they sign a professional contract, they're like, okay, you get to focus. Instead of splitting your focus, you're going to focus on one thing.
Sure. Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if Voigt didn't move up my rankings. He is maybe somebody I'm a tad low on. He saw a pretty big jump in contact rates last year and a pretty good improvement on his chase rate too. And he had 14 home runs for 2 straight seasons and some pretty respectable power. So he'll be fun to see, what the Mets do with him. But like you said, they've had a lot of success with that profile. Let's round it out with one more player as we wrap up the show. That's Murph Gray, who I think is a good, fun power upside. Went to the Pittsburgh Pirates, big frame from Fresno State. What you got on Murph Gray?
So I first heard about Murph Gray being an interesting buzz. There's a little bit of buzz on him. I went to go see Tyler Bremner in his first start of the season up in UC Santa Barbara, and there were some scouts. We were kind of surprised at how little the scout turnout was, and everyone's like, we know what Bremner is, but a bunch of guys in that area decided to go down to Fresno State and go see Murph Gray. Murph Gray is pretty crazy power. Like it could be 70 raw power. It's just, will he get into that power in game? Because the swing is a little weird, I guess is the best way to put it, but when he does make contact, and he can really hit the ball really far. He's really aggressive in the box. Like I think he swings at almost an alarming rate, but he's got crazy raw power. And if your draft sort of follows this way and he's the 83rd overall selection, I think he's a good gamble. He's not someone who's ever going to provide anything in the stolen base department, and you may have to move to first base, which puts more pressure on the bat, especially in the fantasy sense. But I think that this is a guy who could hit 20 to 25 home runs. And, as your like 6th or 7th pick in an FYPD, I kind of like the gamble on one elite tool.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. If he's going, he's going late enough for sure. So there's plenty of room to take him later. You could certainly go above where I have him ranked if you want that potential power upside. So it is a fun gamble to round out the show. So yeah, that's going to do it. Rhys, first show together. It's good to knock this thing out. It was a fun episode, and we'll be looking forward to many more. Rhys has his Diamondbacks top prospects report that'll be coming out soon, and then we got a lot of fun stuff planned on the site for him. We'll be finishing up the team by team top prospects. Just dropped the Rays. That list is deep, by the way. The Rays are always incredibly deep, and they've traded for a lot of more prospects this offseason. Rangers will be up next for me. But Rhys, anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Outside of the Diamondbacks, I got the Rockies, which I'm sitting down to start ranking after I finish writing my Diamondbacks blurbs. And outside of that, I'm going to be doing like some open world rankings at some point, which I'm very excited about. And then, maybe doing like a call out to what to expect in the upcoming FYPD, because I will be seeing Rock Chalowski quite a bit. I'm just scheduling that out right now. I'm going to sit down and, figure out which matchups are worth going to see, which, and everything like that. Obviously, I'm going to be going there a lot of Friday nights and Saturday nights, maybe skip out on the Sunday, go see someone else on a Sunday. So it's going to be very exciting. There's going to be a lot of video for everybody. Chris was very nice enough to send me over the watermark, so this way no one can steal our video, because that's a thing in today's landscape. It is the worst, and I'm super excited to be over here. Thank you, Chris, for bringing me over. I think this is going to be a really fun combination with me fitting into what is already an amazing brand.
Yeah, man. Glad to have you on board, and a lot of good things coming to the website. That's going to do it for this episode of the Dynasty Dugout Show, and we will talk to you again soon.
If you're a podcast host, listen up. This one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle. And I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences, and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity, and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently, too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.